everybody. So, what we're talking about today is, and we've talked about fear before, but it's so powerful, we can talk about it again. You know, what if everything that you've ever wanted to do or to be or to go is on the other side of fear? And you know, fear keeps us from doing a lot of things. And so I want to talk a little bit about fear today. And, you know, fear, exaggerated fear, turns to anxiety. And, you know, the 12 and 12, AA 12 and 12 talks about that fear it's a character defect. It's a thread that runs through everything. I mean, it is the underlying causes of just about everything, even feelings. You know, when you feel angry, usually the core of it is some kind of fear. Fear of not, you know, the 12 and 12 says that we fear not getting what we think that we are due, heaven forbid if we ever do, or losing what we have. You know, fear of getting or not having or losing what we have. So, you know, and around the rooms we've heard, I'm sure all of you have heard, that addicts of any sort of addict has exaggerated fear at times. And, you know, we hear around the rooms false evidence appearing real. We can get a little bit of information about something and build us a case. And usually the case is against ourselves. And so let's talk about fear a little bit. And, you know, healthy fear, God gives us. He gives us all of the feelings, but when they're exaggerated, they can become character defects. And so healthy fear is in the present moment. It's the house is burning down, the house is on fire, get out of the house. It's about taking caution. You know, there's a stop sign, stop at the stop sign. You know, healthy fear teaches us to take care of ourselves. And but unhealthy fear is creates a seedbed for anxiety. Unhealthy fear is about the future. It's all about what if is going to happen. It's in the future. So let's talk about that a little bit about, you know, and that kind of fear of what is going to happen. What can happen is it turns to worry, you know, and then worry is really what worry is picking out the worst case scenario that can happen in a situation and focusing on that. You know, oh my God, we never see the bright side. It is the worst case. This is going to happen. And, you know, we live in a fearful country, in a fearful world. And if we really let it, it could take all of us down. But this is where we have to stay in the moment, So I want to give you some little thoughts on this, on fear. And one of the things is to be aware that awareness is the key here, is a gift of God. When you're feeling fear, and you're aware that you're feeling that fear, stop and do a spot check inventory and ask yourself, you know, what is so bad, awful, and wrong about my life right now that I am so fearful that I am just in, you know, my stomach's in a knot. So awareness, we can't change anything till we're aware of it. So the first thing is to be aware. And fear, healthy fear stays in the moment. Exaggerated, unhealthy fear is always about the future. And like I said, it can be a seedbed for anxiety. So remember that now is the moment of power. Right this minute is the only minute that we have. We're doing an intensive this week, and we were talking about how to stay in the moment, in the minute. Because when you know, there's very few life or death situations in the moment. you know, when you really stop everything, the chatter in our heads and, you know, the TV and the this and the that, and we hear all that, you know, stuff that is going on or could go on, and we get back to the present moment and ask ourselves, for my life, for my children, or for my household, or for my friends, you know, what is there to be so fearful about in this moment and this moment? So, like I said, I'm going to repeat it. Now is the moment of power. That could be one thing you could remember. Then number two, look at the core of where the fear is coming from. And this is where we recommend that you look at your childhood. If you live in constant fear, it had a beginning somewhere. And usually it is taught or passed down. You know, children will carry the feelings of parents, and a lot of times that's where it starts. This overdeveloped fear can start in childhood. And if you have lived in a household that was taught that the world is a scary place, that's how you're going to see it. And you're going to go out there thinking, you know, they're all out there waiting to get me, you know. And in reality, you know, people are not sitting around thinking about us or trying to get us. What they're thinking about is what we're thinking about them. You know, it's a mixed up, crazy world. So all we need to do is to really look at the core of where your fear comes from. And it usually comes from childhood. I've talked probably a lot about my childhood. I lived in a fear-based childhood. We were taught fear. And my dad, you know, would always say, the only people you can trust is in this house. Everyone else you have to fear. Well, when I got grown, I realized it was the opposite. What I needed to fear was who was inside that house. But it did produce fear in me at an early age. And another thing, and this is where doing inner child work, doing your childhood work is so important to get to the core of your fear. And this is why we recommend people come in to do an intensive, because a lot of times, see, a day in the life of a child is much different than a day in the life of an adult. And something can be said or done to a child that will plant that seed of fear, and then it grows and it grows and it grows, and it can stack up till you come here to do free and release part of it. But anyway, and looking back at my own childhood, and this is the gift that you'll get by looking back at your childhood, is I've always had a fear. It's been more of a phobia about snakes. I mean, a phobia. Like I could see a string and I'd run 2 blocks. I mean, thinking it was a snake, and it might be just a string. But just an overdeveloped phobia about snakes. And to tell you the truth, I've only seen one live one in my life that I remember. So I had to look at, and when I was doing a lot of childhood work, and I've told y'all before, my mother had affairs, but she had an affair with this man. And I remember one time we were going somewhere, and we stopped at a gas station, and they had a curio shop in there. And they had these, I know today, they're plaster of Paris rattlesnakes. I mean, they looked like real rattlesnakes, you know, all curled up and the tongue out. And that man picked up one of them, and he kept scaring me, and I was about 4 or 5, kept scaring me with it and scaring me with me. And he'd chase me around that filling station, and Mom and him would just laugh. That was the beginning of the fear of snakes. It doesn't take much for a child. Now, if I'd been an adult, you know, I would have, you know, stopped him. But I didn't know I couldn't do that. I didn't have the tools to do that. But once I got that information, that's where it started. That phobia of snakes, it didn't cure the phobia of snakes. I mean, I didn't go out and become a snake charmer or anything like that, but it made me aware of where it came from. And so we were coming back from Fort Worth one time, and there's always a truck stop there where we would stop. And I would very seldom go in there, or I'd go in one door because they had this big display it's an art display of every kind of rattlesnake, little rattlesnakes, big rattlesnakes, and I would manage, and my kids would help me. They would take me and they'd say, "Mother, don't look, and they'd wind me around to where I'd get to the bathroom without seeing that display of stuffed snakes. They weren't real. But after I had done a lot of work around that, we were coming back from Fort Worth, and I made a decision sitting in the car, and I called my sponsor and talked to her about it. And she said, "Well, this is what we have to do. We have to face the fear and go through it." So I made a decision to go in there. I went through the front door, I went up to the case, and I looked at those snakes that were not real. They had been at one time. But that was big for me, and a couple of my kids were there, and they were just all up in arms, afraid I was just going to run off, and and I have before run off. I mean, see a string or something, or a hose that might look like a snake, and I'd run 2 blocks. So my behavior had preceded me, and my children knew what my behavior was. But I stood there and looked, and I thought, look how much power I have given snakes, the thought of snakes. So that's just a little personal thing about facing the fear. And like I said, I have a very, very healthy fear of snakes. And like I said, I'm not going to, start being a snake charmer or anything. And another thing, be careful around your children when you talk about scary things, because children soak it up. And what may not be scary, they create it to be. For instance, and I could tell you the detailed story, but before I was born, my mom and dad the house was blown away in a tornado. I know it was tragic. They lost everything they had, and except my sister and I, and they made it. I mean, I wasn't born. My mother was expecting me. And so I heard the story of the storm forever. And if the wind would get to blowing a little bit, or a cloud would come up, my mother would go into hysterics, and we'd have to go find a cellar. Well, we lived in West Texas, and there wasn't very many cellars, but we did find one to go to. And so I grew up with a fear of storms, but as a teenager, I started researching. Back then we looked in encyclopedias. There was no Google, but I started researching tornadoes and what the low average was. So there was a good chance that I would never see a tornado in my lifetime. And guess what? I haven't. But for the longest, I took on Mother's fear about storms. So, watch when of course, we need to teach our children to take caution about different things, but when it's a phobia of yours, or an extreme fear, your children are going to pick that up. Okay, so get to the core, find out what the core is, and number 3 is take charge of your own thoughts. When you're in the midst of this overdeveloped fear, your mind, our minds can just get on a railroad track and just go down, just zoom, and what we don't know about what we need to be fearful of, we make it up. We create things to be fearful of. And so take charge of your own thoughts. Pull that train back to the present moment and ask yourself, how important is this that I am so fearful about? And is it happening today? Is it happening in this moment? I know people, and I have in the past worried about bills, worried about this, worried about that. And I'll tell you, it's a waste of time and attention to do that. And so choose wisely what you're going to think about. Choose why. And I will tell you, we have a choice. We're not just, out there at the mercy of fear. We do have a choice, and so choose wisely. Stop in the midst of, a fear attack, and ask yourself, is this something to really be fearful about? Do I need to be fearful today? Now, it doesn't mean to not take precaution and plan for the future and all that, but it means you take charge of your thoughts. And by this time, you have already, if you go with this, you've done some inner child work and you have realized maybe some of that fear, where it has come from. And, like I said, things that happen in a child's life is much different than what happens in an adult's life, and it magnifies. And then if we don't check that out and get some truth about it, it will carry over into our adult life. So I want to give you a little formula for relieving fear. And all of y'all that I see on this screen, I believe in God. You're 12 steppers. You believe in God. I want to give you a formula for releasing fear. And what it is having knowing that there is a God and He's in charge. When we get all up in arms about fear and what's going to happen and it's about stopping in the midst of it and turning it over to the God of your understanding. And so many people, and I see it all the time, I see it a lot. People never stop to think, I could turn, and religious people, I'm talking about, we're all human beings and we all are fallible. But I have seen people that get so into the fear, into the worry, and all that they break down in stress-related illnesses. And these are believers. These are people who believe in God. But it's almost can become being an agnostic. What an agnostic is someone who believes in God but takes no action. You can believe in God till hell freezes over and never turn anything over to Him. The God that I believe in is a gentleman. He could run in and take away every problem, every fear that we have, but He lets us have it. We can sit with it, and if we want to figure it out on our own, He'll let us. But if we want His aid, all we have to say is, God, help me. And, it's not magic. He doesn't do a magic wand, but He hears our prayers. And I think for me, I've heard prayers, yes, no, and not now. No is sometimes, God answers no. No, you don't need that job. No, you don't need to sell that house. No, you don't need to go on this trip. No. And how He speaks is by signs and symbols. Something will come up and I'll have a knowing that that's God speaking to me. And then something good will happen. I'll think, yeah, that's a yes. God is speaking to me. And also God lives and breathes and works through people. And find people that you trust. And when you have something real fearful that's facing you, get with someone that you trust. And, a burden shared is cut half in two. A joy is doubled. So those fears, when we keep them all inside, and they're usually inside our heads, it's stuff that we make up. And we really make up what if that happened? Well, if you believe in God and you ask God to help you, He's going to give you the tools to go through whatever the what if is. It may not be, the outcome may not be exactly what you want it to be, but down the line, most of the time what I see is when I get a no, it was for my best good, So I'm going to give you this little formula. First of all, is to, when you have a big problem that you fear, and let's say, I'll give you an example. when I came back from treatment, I knew that I wanted to treat all addictions with a primary focus on eating disorders. And after going back to the treatment center where I worked and starting the unit there, I knew in a year that I wanted to move it and have a freestanding treatment center myself. Because my primary thing is I wanted to have a non-smoking unit. And we did, and you know that to my knowledge, we're still the only non-smoking drug and alcohol or any kind of treatment center that I know of. I mean, there may be, I just don't happen to know them. But we started out non-smoking. And all I had was a dream. And if you don't have a dream, you'll never have a dream come true. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. I did not know, my husband had been in business for years, but I didn't go through the particulars to put that business together. I supported him and I worked down there and all, but I didn't know how to put a business together, but I had a dream. And what I had, I probably didn't have enough healthy fear. I didn't. I just knew. I had a knowing that I was going to be able to put in a treatment center. And I won't go into everything that happened, but first of all, you've got to believe that God can and will remove your fear or any obstacle in front of you. To believe is to have a suspicion. You don't know for sure that your fear is going to be removed or the situation will change. You just have a suspicion. If you invite God into that situation, you believe that you're going to find a solution. All you have to do is to start with believing that there is a solution and that will help you through the fear. And then another thing is you can believe till hell freezes over and nothing's going to change. You can have a suspicion. This is what I really want to do. I want to go to school. I want to put in a business. I want a new job. I want a baby. I can't afford a baby. I want a husband. I want a wife. You can want all you want to, and you can believe it. But until you make a decision, this is number 2, until you make a concrete decision to get past the fear of whatever the action is and walk through that fear to make a decision, you look at the facts. You look at the facts of what's on the other side of your fear that maybe you want to do. You gather your facts. One of the things, and this is another illustration, that I had a deep, deep desire to travel. But I didn't know how to travel. I didn't know how to buy an airplane ticket. I didn't know what to do about any of that. And one of the things I did is I started gathering facts. That was back when there was, storefront travel agents. And I didn't know where I was going, but I was going to look at possibilities of places to travel. So I went to different, bless my heart, I guess God just gave me that, I don't know, but I went to different travel agents and I picked up brochures and I started looking at those brochures. I just took just made a decision and I began to look at the facts. And how you make a decision, you look at if you go in one direction, and if you decide not to do that, or do you want to let God direct you in the direction that you want to go? And there again, if you believe that God can and will remove that fear, you've got to put it in His hands, but you've got to make a decision. I'm going to put it in God's hands, and then I'm going to do the footwork. We do the footwork, God blesses the effort. So you make a decision. But there again, we can make decisions all the time. I've made a decision. I'm going to get a job, and we never put in an application. Or I've made a decision. I am going to go on that vacation, and we never buy a ticket. So we can make decisions. Hell freezes over. But until you take the action. So you believe, you make the decision, and then you take action. And then, when you take the action, you look fear in the face. You really look at it, the thing that you fear the most, and ask yourself, is this really real? Is it real? And if, about the only time fear is real is when it's in the present moment and that house is burning down, or, something tragic is happening. Absolutely, that is present fear. Everything else involving fear is in the future. It may be the next hour, the next day, 20 years from now. It's always in the future, fear is. So you got to ask yourself, take the action and ask yourself, is what I'm feeling, is it real or is it imaginary? Am I making this up? And that's the action that you take to do that type of research. One of the things you can do is journal about your fear. Once you can journal about the fear. And in that, you can see, if you just do some free-flowing writing, a lot of times you'll see where you're stuck in the fear. So take action. And then when you take the action, what's going to happen is you're going to see results. There's no failure to this deal. If you believe, have a suspicion that what you have, that you fear, have fear over, if you really believe that God can and will help you through that fear, then you make a decision that you're going to turn the fear over to the God of your understanding. But until you take the action to turn it over, nothing's going to happen. You got to take the action. Turn it over, get up out of that easy chair where you're dreaming and take action and put, footwork to those dreams and get past the fear. And when you look back, after you do that, you look back, you think, well, what in the world was I so scared of? Because invariably, if what you're deciding to do, that fearful thing that you're scared of, if you really take the appropriate action and you invite God into that deal, He's going to pave the way for you. Things will happen that you can't imagine, that you could not dream up. He will make those things happen. And that's why you have to pay close attention. You have to stay conscious. We go unconscious with the fear. We go unconscious with, wringing our hands. So it's about staying conscious and see what is really real about the fear that you have. And so there again, get to the core of where it came from. And so what you're going to do after you do those three things, you're going to see some results. You're going to see some results. And what you will see is you will experience the results. And that's going to give you a frame of reference of how to go through fear again. It's about believe, just have a suspicion that you're going to get through it, and whatever you want on that other side, that you can reach that achievement, that goal. I had not had, I'm sounding like this all about me, but anyway, these are the only examples I have, that I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college. And my husband's alcoholism was getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I thought, one of these days I might have to make these kids a living. And so what I did is I had to make a decision to do something different. And so what I made the decision to do was to go back to school. And that was hard. But once I went and started doing the research on it, and, other people, I remember there was a woman at Cisco Junior College that put so much belief in me. And she said, just let me believe that you can do this until you get to believe in it. That's what I'm saying. God will put people in your life, situations in your life, but you've got to suit up and show up and get off the couch and take action. So, and then you're going to see results. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of faith. You're going to have faith that God has pulled you through this time, and he's going to pull you through again. And when you have faith, then you have something to offer someone else. And when they come to you about, I have this big decision to make and I don't know what to do, you could go through this process with them and share your faith. That if, you can't give them your faith, but you can share the process with them. And when you have faith, what the faith will do is turn your fear around. You can't have both at the same time. You can't have faith in fear. It will absolutely, God will walk you through every step of the way of the fear till you get on the other side to faith. Now, like I said, we are human and we forget. And so when something else comes up, when we get into that, what's going to happen? Go back through these steps. But we have to stay conscious. We have to calm our mind down and realize, I've been through situations before. And I took the action, the footwork, and I saw results, and I had faith, and I can do this again. And that does sound like such a simple solution, and guess what? It is. The hard part is being willing to take the action, being willing to take the action. So, when I was talking about putting in a treatment center, we kept looking at, there's a friend was going to go in partnership, her name was Carmen, and we kept looking for places. Everything was a dead end. I was still at the Serenity House. They wanted me to stay. The board of directors, I ate more lunches with them during that year that they were trying to get me to stay there, because the reason they wanted me to stay there is because I was a work addict. I mean, I gave them many, many hours, and they didn't want to lose me. But I wanted to treat all addictions, including nicotine addiction. So I was at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do. Every place we had looked, the doors had closed. And so my oldest daughter, her first child was born. It was in December, and I went up to Lubbock and to be with her baby. And the board of directors told me before the end of the year I was going to have to make a decision if I was going to go on my own, if I was going to stay there. They needed a decision. And I couldn't make it. I didn't have any place to go, to open. I didn't have a bill or anything. Anyway, I went up there, and it snowed, and we couldn't get out, and she couldn't go home for another day, I think. But anyway, I needed a meeting, so I went downstairs and I asked the information desk lady if she knew any 12-step meetings around. And she said, well, there's been a lot of them here, but I know that there's one meeting right now, and I don't know what it is, but it's across that parking lot. And they had cleared the parking lot of snow, and she told me the building. And so I walked over there to that building, not knowing what kind of 12-step meeting it was. I still don't know what kind it was. I walked in, and it was in the middle of a meeting. And I sat down. And this is why it's important for us to get in meetings, because invariably we're going to hear something we need to hear, and we never know what that is if we don't show up. So I sat down, and this woman was talking and about making decisions. And what she said was, God never shows me or directs me where I need to go until I give up where I am. I've got to give up where I am before God shows me where I need to go. That was my answer. Went back to my daughter's room, wrote out my resignation, called Christy, my youngest daughter. I said, type this up, take it by the Serenity House. You sign it because you can sign my name as well as I do. She said, Mother, are you sure? I said, yeah. But it took me hearing, it was like God spoke through that woman. If you want to get where you're going, you've got to give up where you are. So I didn't know. I knew I could be a housewife, and I knew come January the 1st, I didn't have a job, and I didn't have a place to go for work. But I knew if it was meant to be, God would show me where I needed to go. And I'm going to save that till next week, because next week's topic, I want to talk about dreams and goals. you know, dreams and goals, we can have a goal, and anyway, I'm not going to go into that. That's what we're going to talk about. And like I said, if you never have a dream, you don't have a dream come true. That's a song that came out of South Pacific. If you never have a dream, you never have a dream come true. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of that story, how my dream came true and how Shades of Hope manifested through that. So that's what I have about fear and about how to walk through fear and get to the other side. And I want to open it up to any of you. We've got people here for the intensive. We've got inpatient. We've got people here on the Zoom. So this is, tell me about how you've overcome fear. Are you in the midst of fear?